Breaking Bad is a nutty masterpiece of television.
I'm coming.
A lot of people would agree with that. When I first became a fan of the show back in 2013, right around when it was ending, it was already beloved and hyped. I never could have imagined that a full decade later, it would be pulling in an entirely new generation of viewers. To me, mostly evidenced by how much of a staple the show has become in meme culture over the last couple of years.
Mr. Beast
My
from
name is
Fortnite was
Skylar
sliding
Whiteyo. My husband is Walter
into your sussy
Whiteyo.
pussy. You know what I'm saying?
Put your dick away, Wolfie.
Everything.
I've watched Breaking Bad like 30 times over since then. And when you consume your favorite thing over and over, you tend to deconstruct it a little and pick up on new things that you otherwise missed before.
Product at every
The fuck?
Yes, it is. Of course it is.
Why am I on there?
You have the opportunity.
Some things may even become harder to forgive or look past. In the case of Breaking Bad, I can think of at least one detail that bothers me when rewatching. Not to the point of ruining the show or its core quality. I fucking love Breaking Bad, but still enough to tickle the back of my brain a little bit. Gustavo Fring, established as a veteran, community figure, and chicken man in the drug trade for decades by the time we first meet him in the show, with a self-made, sophisticated distribution system disguised as a fast food conglomerate that is tailored around evading the local DEA's attention by supplying product miles away from Albuquerque. So the drugs are made in Albuquerque, they're delivered from Albuquerque, but they're not sold in Albuquerque. And why else have a distribution network in place if not for this? We even see the DEA stumped when meth slows down in Albuquerque after Tuco passes on and Walt stops cooking periodically.
But outside, got reports of the blue stuff making the scene here in Texas, Arizona, Colorado, and Nevada. In fact, everywhere but here. Almost as if somebody wised up, stopped shitting where they eat.
Putting miles between you and your illegal product is going to make it all the harder to trace back to your secret drug operation. Makes sense why Gus spent 20 years and probably millions building a covert system like this. A lot of risk is mitigated.
Gustavo Fring didn't use mules. He didn't need them. He spent 20 years building his own distribution. He had 16 refrigerator trucks running his product.
So then, how the fuck do you explain these two? Why is it that Jesse can find himself two low-level street dealers to beef with that belong to Gus? These should be impossible to find. Keep in mind, this is a man who has international business relationships with mega corporations that allow him to move his product in bulk safely, likely generating the highest possible revenue, rendering street dealers completely useless. Like, completely. He is seen as excessively cautious, going so out of his way to keep his anonymity that he puts bags over associates' heads to avoid the identification of his workers and location. And listen, I get that Gus's employees are loyal to him. There is an entire plot thread in Season 5 dedicated to the lengths that he went to maintain loyalty amongst his crew.
Hey.
But these are two men who are shown to be willing to resort to violence out in the open and know who Gus is and can identify him. I don't care how loyal this couple of criminals are, Gus is not a character who is written as this trusting and loosey-goosey about potential risks. It's even theorized that Gus kills Victor for showing himself at Jesse's crime scene, where people can make him. So why is it that Gus is chill about these guys hanging out around crime scenes, albeit carefully, and existing in a space where public shootouts are even a possibility? This one bothered me so much that I started thinking, what if these guys aren't employees? What if Gus is acting on pretense and framing them as partners to orchestrate Jesse's conflict with them and paint him as a problem, thus justifying getting rid of him to Walter? Okay, maybe. We know how badly Gus wanted Jesse out of the equation, at least at first, but to believe this is to believe that Gus would be willing to trust in two complete strangers who now know his face, can be directly linked to him should they fold under questioning, essentially posing a risk to the super secret operation of fully vetted employees that Gus spent years building, just to have Jesse killed. I think that Gus and his overly careful head of security, Mike, could have thought of a better way. At least, if this was true, Gus would not have shown them his face at the truce meet with Jesse and Walter. And this is not to say that Gus is infallible or incapable of making mistakes. Of course he is. One could argue that a contributing factor to his death is Mike Ehrmantraut, his head of security, being absent due to being in recovery from a gunshot wound, who would have likely counseled him in such a way to avoid certain pitfalls during his face-off with Walter. But to suggest that Gus employs and continues to employ such liabilities that directly contradict the entire core philosophy of his business model is to suggest that Gus has no concern for caution, which again is inconsistent with his character.
I was told that the man I would be meeting with is very careful, a cautious man.
To suggest that Gus would hire these two strangers with the intention of killing Jesse also does the same, because that implies that Gus would be willing to show them many of the inner workings of his operation as well as his face. Either which way, I think the writers just really needed a way to get Gus to hate Walter to move the plot along. And I'm glad it did, because what a plot it is. Breaking Bad really is one of those instances where even the immense hype behind it fails to encapsulate the outstanding quality of the show. A video detailing everything it does right would be 100 times as long as one about its faults. Like, here's another one. Mike and Walt are often alluded to being in a sexual relationship.
Walter. Put your dick away, Walter.
But we never get to see this on screen. Why didn't Vince Gilligan include several sex scenes between Walt and Mike to hammer this idea home? In the same way that Mike was hammering down Walt's butt. That would fall perfectly in line with Vince Gilligan's use of foreshadowing. And there's even a point where Mike tells Walt